In 1850, buried in the ruins of an Assyrian palace, an archaeologist pulled a small piece of ground rock crystal out of the rubble. It did not look like much. It may be one of the most debated objects in the history of science. It is oval, slightly rough, and about 1.5 inches across, and it is shaped, unmistakably, like a lens. The trouble is, it was made around 2,700 years before anyone is supposed to have understood optics well enough to make one on purpose. This is the NIMRUD lens, and historians and scientists still do not agree on what it actually is or what it was for. The object was uncovered by the British archaeologist Austen Henry Layard during his excavations of the ancient Assyrian city of Nimrud in what is now northern Iraq. Nimrud had once been a major capital of the Assyrian Empire, home to grand palaces covered in detailed stone reliefs, and Layard's dig there was one of the great archaeological events of the 19th century. Amid the throne rooms and carved wall panels and the debris of the Northwest Palace, Layard's team found this one small, unusual disk of rock crystal, dated to roughly the 7th century BC. It is what is known as a plano-convex lens, flat on one side, gently curved on the other, ground and polished from natural quartz. A shape that, held correctly and positioned at the right distance, will focus and magnify light. Exactly the shape you would use to make a basic magnifying glass, or the starting point for a simple telescope lens. The lens now sits in the British Museum, catalogued simply as Object 1855-0403.98, a small, unglamorous piece of quartz with a very large question attached to it. So here is where historians split. One camp says this is nothing more than a decorative inlay, maybe for furniture or jewelry, or a polished ornamental stone that happens to be lens-shaped by coincidence. Ancient Mesopotamian craftsmen were skilled at cutting and polishing gemstones and rock crystal for jewelry and inlay work, so a lens-shaped decorative piece is not, on its own, an impossible idea. The other camp, including the physicist Giovanni Pettinato, who studied the object in detail in the 1990s, argued this was too precisely and deliberately shaped to be a coincidence. It functions optically, and functions well. Tests on the lens have shown it does genuinely focus light and magnify objects when used correctly, at roughly a modest 3 times magnification, comparable to a basic reading glass. Pettinato went further, suggesting Assyrian craftsmen may have used it as a magnifying aid for fine detail work, like the extraordinarily small and precise cuneiform inscriptions found on some tablets from this period. Some cuneiform script from this era is genuinely microscopic, hard to read even today without magnification. That detail is real, and it is one of the stronger pieces of circumstantial evidence for the lens theory. A more speculative idea, floated occasionally in popular science writing, suggests the Assyrians may have used it, or lenses like it, as a rudimentary telescope for astronomy, since Assyrian scholars kept detailed astronomical records. Mainstream historians of science treat this particular idea with real skepticism. One lens alone does not make a telescope. No supporting written evidence describes one, and no second lens or tube has ever been found alongside it. It is important to be honest about that here. This is not a settled discovery of ancient Assyrian optics. It is a single, genuinely ambiguous object, and researchers have disagreed about it for over a century. What almost everyone agrees on is this. The object is a real, well-made plano-convex lens, ground from natural rock crystal with real skill, roughly 2,700 years ago. Whether the Assyrians who made it understood they were shaping something that could bend and focus light, or whether they were simply skilled artisans who produced this shape for decoration and stumbled onto its optical property by accident, we do not know. It also is not entirely alone. A handful of other ancient lens-like crystal objects have turned up at other archaeological sites across the eastern Mediterranean and Near East, though none as famous or as closely studied as this one. If even a fraction of these were used deliberately for magnification, it would mean people in the ancient world were experimenting with basic optics far earlier and far more informally than any surviving written record describes. The formal history of optics, the one taught in textbooks, usually starts centuries later, with Greek philosophers theorizing about vision and light, and does not treat working lenses as common until the medieval Islamic world and later medieval Europe. The NIMRUD lens sits stubbornly earlier than that timeline, asking a question the timeline was not built to answer. What if isolated, practical experiments with lenses happened quietly, generations before anyone wrote the theory down? That is the genuinely unresolved mystery here, and it likely will stay unresolved. Short of finding a second lens, or a written Assyrian description of its use, we are reading intention into a single object that cannot speak for itself. For now, it sits in a display case in London, 3,000 miles from the palace where it was buried, still quietly bending light exactly the way it did the day it was ground and polished. Do you think the Assyrians knew what they had made? Tell us your theory in the comments below. Subscribe, because next time we are looking at a weapon so lost to history that the doctors who used it were centuries ahead of their reputation, the surgical toolkit of ancient Rome.